Midday. A Tuesday afternoon. A coffee shop closing shift. A school Christmas parade. A quiet neighborhood at 1 in the morning. None of today's stories start in a place that should feel dangerous. That is exactly what makes them so hard to forget. Let's get into it. He tried to get in. This happened a couple of days ago, around midday. I had just gotten home from my son's first haircut, laid him down for a nap in his crib, and laid down in my own bed. Then I heard the front door handle rattle. I never lock my door during the day, but today I had, and I cannot even remember doing it. It rattled a few more times. My bedroom window faces the front porch, so I peeked out and saw a very tall man peering into my other window. Then he just sat down in the chair I have on the porch, right next to the window that my head was inches away from. I did not hesitate. I called the police immediately, because I do not own a gun, and my baby was in the house. I whispered the details to the dispatcher for about 6 minutes. An officer arrived, the man tried to run, and they arrested him. I was told afterward he had an outstanding warrant for burglary. My baby was asleep in the next room the entire time. 6 minutes on the phone. 6 minutes that mattered. Now from a front porch to someone else's living room, were what our next storyteller witnessed left them unable to sleep. Witnessed something I am literally sick over. I was stupid and went to an acquaintance's friend's apartment nearby. I walked in and immediately noticed the smoke in the air and a little boy sitting on the couch, right in the middle of it. The acquaintance I was with and the boy's father started smoking illegal substances in front of the child. I was immediately uncomfortable. The father hit the boy a couple of times, and I said, "Please do not do that." He laughed at me. I spent some time with the boy. He was so excited to show me his toys. When I had to leave, the boy grabbed my hand and begged me not to go. I told him I would be back. I still feel awful for saying that. I got home and told a couple of people. They told me to stay out of it. I could not. I reported it to a child abuse hotline. I am afraid of what comes next, because it will be obvious it was me who made the call. I am so sick over it, I cannot sleep. Update. I am pursuing the call and making sure this boy gets help. The father also called the boy horrible names. I did not mention that before. It is probably so much worse when no one is watching. She made the call anyway. Now from a child in danger to something quieter, and in some ways, stranger, because the next story starts with a girl asking for help with her car, and ends with something that still does not make complete sense. Car trouble in front of my house that still creeps me out. This happened about 4 years ago. My dad works nights, so I am home alone until about 2:30 in the morning most days. One night around 1 in the morning, there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole I saw a young woman, maybe 15 or 16, or just someone who looked very young, standing next to a car parked in front of my house. I answered. She said she was having car trouble, and asked if I could come outside and check it out, possibly give her a jump. I do not drive, and I know very little about cars, so I offered to call someone for her. Roadside assistance, a tow service. She declined but kept insisting I come look at the lights on her dashboard, to see if they were normal. I did not want to be outside alone with a stranger at 1 in the morning, so I politely told her I would be of no help, and went back inside. But I kept watching through the peephole. She opened the rear door, got into the back seat, and the car drove away. The moment it registered, my stomach dropped. Someone else had been in that car the whole time, waiting. She had not been there alone. I spent the next few days looking over my shoulder, afraid they would come back, knowing someone was home alone. And I still think about that girl. I have no idea who she was, or why she was there, or whether she was a victim herself. I still do not have a good answer. It just stays with me. The driver was there the whole time, waiting. Now from a doorstep in the dead of night to a quiet residential street where a 16-year-old walked home alone and listened to a feeling that she could not explain but that may have saved her life. When a gut feeling saves you from the man waiting in a doorway. This happened about 10 years ago, when I was 16 or 17. I recently found this forum, and it brought everything flooding back. At the time I mostly brushed it off, because nothing bad technically happened to me. Looking back now, I understand exactly how close it was. I was coming home on a Thursday night after being out with friends. I had taken the bus to my residential neighborhood, a route I had done hundreds of times. It was around 11 at night, but I was not particularly worried. It was a nice area, only a 5 to 10 minute walk from the stop to my house. As I turned down a long residential street toward home, I noticed a man walking further ahead of me, back toward me, moving in the same direction. I was a little on edge, but reassured myself. He was walking away, not toward me. Then he turned around and looked at me. I told myself that was normal. I do the same thing when I hear footsteps behind me at night. But he kept doing it, checking over his shoulder again and again, every few steps, making sure I was still walking in the same direction as him. There was no one else around, just the two of us. Then he turned down the path of one of the houses to the right, and I breathed out. I was just being paranoid. The houses in my area have front doors set back into an enclosed entryway, which means from where I was standing, about 50 feet away, I could not actually see the front door. I saw him walk down the path and disappear behind the wall. My logical conclusion was that he had let himself in. But the relief only lasted a moment. Something shifted. A small voice in my head said, "What if he is just faking you out?" The feeling got stronger and stronger until I stepped off the pavement and crouched behind a parked car. I stayed there, watching the house. After a minute or two of silence, I saw movement. The man came back down the path and out into the street. He was looking around, scanning, looking for me. He had been waiting in the doorway, knowing that if I had kept walking, I would not see him until it was too late. But because he was hidden, he also could not see me, and when I did not walk past as expected, he had to come back out to find where I had gone. I sprinted, down a side street, longer route home. I did not stop until I was inside with the door double-locked behind me. I went to school the next morning and never told anyone, but I think about it often. She crouched behind a parked car and waited, and she was right too. Now, from a quiet street in England to a busy supermarket in South Africa, where a woman in the checkout line noticed something that no one else around her seemed to see. I am certain they were planning on kidnapping her. But after I intervened, they turned their attention onto me. This happened about 8 years ago in my local supermarket on a busy Saturday morning. I was second in the checkout line. In front of me was a family, a mom, a dad, and a young daughter sitting in the trolley seat, facing me. Behind me were two men standing uncomfortably close. I could feel them before I turned around. And the little girl looked uncomfortable too, making herself small, glancing back at her dad. The two men were waving and smiling at her. Then one of them reached around me and touched her foot, not accidentally, but in a familiar way, as though they knew her. She flinched. He did it again. She quietly said, "Daddy." Her dad turned around immediately and in a loud voice told the man to back off. He did not know them. Do not touch his daughter. The man said almost cheerfully, "But we want to be friends." I positioned myself between the two men and the girl and completely blocked access to her. Then I said, loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "You are so lucky to have such a brave and strong daddy. Look how he is protecting you from these bad men." The dad caught my eye. We understood each other immediately. They packed up and left quickly. I thought it was over. As I began unloading my trolley, I noticed one of the men had moved to the end of the till, right where I needed to exit, and was staring at me with pure malice. The other was still behind me in the queue. I will not pretend I was not scared, but I had 15 kilograms of dog food in my trolley and adrenaline running through me. I made eye contact with the man blocking my exit, lifted the bag like it weighed nothing, and held his gaze without blinking. He stared back. I paid. He blocked my exit. I bumped him lightly with my trolley. He laughed and moved aside. They followed me through the shopping center. Every time I turned around, they were there, now with a third man. One of them made a motion across his throat. I walked directly to the security desk. When I turned around, they were gone. Security escorted me to my car. I drove home the long way, watching my mirrors the entire time. I never saw them again, and for reasons that had nothing to do with the men, their prices are just not competitive, I stopped going to that supermarket. She lifted 15 kilograms of dog food like it was nothing. Now, from a supermarket to a front door at 1 in the morning, because the next story is one of the strangest mysteries in today's video, and it is still not fully solved. A weird man showed up at my parents' house at 1 in the morning, looking for me, and using details about my life that were accurate 20 years ago. This happened 3 nights before I posted this, and I have barely slept since. I just moved into a new apartment 1 month ago, and I still use my parents' address as my mailing address. They live about 20 minutes away. The one with the unique Italian name. My stepsister told her the story. The woman's face went white. A few nights before the party, someone had banged on her door at 1 in the morning. She had a video doorbell. On camera, a man in a black hoodie, banging aggressively for several minutes, then leaving when she did not answer. 2 different women. 1 shared ex, 2 visits at 1 in the morning from a man in a black hoodie. We still do not know who he is or what he wanted. Same time, same hoodie, different doors. That is still unresolved. Now from an unsettling mystery to something that was hidden for years, a memory that came back in therapy, and a teacher who grabbed a child's hand and ran. Almost kidnapped by my teacher. Who wants to hear about a repressed memory I recovered in therapy? Apparently you do. When I was in 6th grade, I was in band. Clarinet. Not my choice, but my grandfather had one. The band instructor was a middle-aged woman I'll call Miss Frond. I did not have many friends, so I had extra lessons after school, fairly often. After a while, she started offering to give me lessons at her house. Even then, that made me uncomfortable, and I always declined. She would ask at least once a week. Eventually, I just stopped going back for extra lessons at all. Then Miss Frond announced that the band had been invited to perform in the local Christmas parade. Everyone was thrilled. Permission slips were signed. Extra rehearsals were held. The day of the parade, parents dropped us off at the meeting area, and Miss Frond told them where to pick their children up at the end. The parade went smoothly. At the end, parents arrived and children left one by one. I was the last one, left alone with Miss Frond. The moment the last child was out of sight, she grabbed my hand and started walking. Fast. She said I could call my mom from her house. I was not experienced being alone, and did not know what to do when an adult acted strangely. So I went along. Looking back, we must not have looked unusual to anyone passing. She was not tall, and I had shot up that year, so it was not obvious I was being led. But she was moving with purpose, pulling me further and further from the pickup area, further from where anyone else had parked. Her car came into view. It was the only one left, a dark blue-green sport utility vehicle. She made a direct line for it. Then I heard my name. I turned around and saw my mother sprinting toward us. Miss Frond's grip tightened. She sped up. My mom yanked me free without a word, walked me to our car, and drove home. She fussed over me in a way that was completely out of character. She was not a particularly attentive parent, and that confused me more than anything else. I never saw Miss Frond in school again. My family never spoke about it. I buried it for years. I still do not know exactly what she intended, but my mother did, and she ran. Her mother ran, and she made it. Now from a small American town to a city in another country entirely, where 2 men and a van followed a mother and her teenage daughter in the dark. And one pharmacist changed everything. Our pharmacist saved my sister from a possible kidnapping. This was 1992. My mother was going through chemotherapy for breast cancer, while also dealing with serious difficulties in her marriage. We lived in a quiet town where for any significant errand, pharmacy, phone calls, anything beyond the local market, you had to travel to the main market, almost 3.5 miles from our home. The only public call office in that area was run by 2 men who gave everyone in the neighborhood an uncomfortable feeling. The same market had the pharmacy where my mother bought her medication. One evening, my mother and my 17-year-old sister went to the call office so my mother could speak with her brother for advice. My mother was distressed and did not realize how late it had gotten by the time she finished. When they went to leave, the market was closed and the last public transport had already stopped running. They paid their bill and began the walk home along the path beside the main road. The 2 men who ran the call office locked up and immediately began following them. One walked directly behind them on the footpath, repeatedly offering to give them a ride. The other rode alongside them on a bicycle on the otherwise empty main road. My mother refused, grabbed my sister's hand, and walked as fast as she could. Then a white van appeared on the service road and began driving slowly beside them. The men would not leave. They seemed to be waiting for my mother and sister to turn off the main road so they would be out of sight. At the next turn, two men appeared coming from the opposite direction on the footpath. My mother's heart must have sunk. But it was the pharmacist and a friend of his, walking back to his shop to collect his car after an evening stroll. He saw the men and the van and immediately understood what was happening. He stopped, greeted my mother warmly, as though they were old friends, and asked if she needed company for the walk home. He and his friend walked them the entire way. The men and the van disappeared the moment the pharmacist stepped in. My mother never went back to that call office, and I have never forgotten what one person choosing to act can mean for someone else. He saw what was happening from 30 feet away and made a decision in under a second. And now, for our final story. This one is long, and it builds slowly, and the moment the danger arrives, it arrives fast. Stay with it. My dad disappeared and the so-called FBI came looking for him. This story happened about 32 years ago in East Texas. My parents divorced when I was 16, and my brothers and I lived with my mom. My dad visited occasionally, usually only when he had money from gambling. He claimed his job as a shuttle driver for a local hotel was a cover, and that he actually worked for organized crime, driving fugitives to the hotel where they would hide until they could be moved on. My brothers and I wrote it off as one of his typical tall tales, until he disappeared. It was 1988. I was 22 and a college student, working the overnight shift at a local radio station as a disc jockey. My middle brother, 19, lived in an apartment with a friend and worked at a fast food restaurant. My youngest brother was 9 and lived at home. One day, my middle brother called my mom and me. Some men had come to his work, asking if he had seen our dad. They did not identify themselves, but seemed satisfied when he said he had not heard from Dad in months. The next day they returned, showed badges, and claimed to be federal agents. They were aggressive. My brother kept telling them the truth. He had no idea where Dad was. My mom called Dad's hotel and was told he had vanished weeks ago. The day after that, my brother's apartment was broken into, sliding glass door left open, place ransacked, but almost nothing was missing, just his address book and a photo of his young son, and a teddy bear he had recently bought for the boy. My mom, my brother, and I went to the actual Federal Bureau office and reported everything. The agents there said they had no knowledge of anyone looking for our dad, and no agents had contacted my brother. Then I remembered something that had happened to me 2 or 3 weeks earlier. Because I worked overnight, I was often awake in the middle of the night on my days off. One night, I left a friend's workplace at 3:30 in the morning. The moment I pulled out of the driveway, a car appeared right behind me, so suddenly it was as though it had materialized from nowhere. High beams blazing directly into my mirrors, completely blinding me. I could not see anything about the car. I changed lanes, it changed with me. I moved again, it followed. I turned, crossed multiple lanes, tried everything I could think of to lose it. Nothing worked. I eventually pulled into a convenience store, ran inside, and told the clerk someone was following me. For the first time I got a look at the car. Tan, 4-door, 2 men inside. The clerk told me I was exaggerating and to let it go. I did not go home. I went to my workplace and stayed for 2 hours, calming down, convincing myself it was nothing. When I finally drove home, more than 2 hours later, the same car was pulling out of my apartment complex as I arrived. As it passed me, they flashed their high beams at me. They had waited 2 hours. Now, connecting all of it, the men at my brother's work, the break-in, the car following me, it made sense. The car I drove had originally been my dad's. He gave it to me 2 months earlier when he bought a new one. Someone looking for him may have seen his old car and assumed I was him. When they got close enough to see I was not, they left. We filed a missing persons report and a complaint with local police. About 5 days later, the detective called us back with the full story. Our dad had disappeared because he owed his employers more than $50,000 in gambling debts. The detective confirmed he had worked for some unsavory individuals. Dad was alive and hiding in Nevada. The men who had harassed my brother were not federal agents. They were unlicensed debt collectors impersonating law enforcement, a tactic that apparently is not uncommon. They had taken the address book to find Dad's contacts, and the photograph and the teddy bear to use as leverage against my brother. It worked. The reason they only targeted my brother and not my mom or me, Dad had listed my brother as a job reference on his hotel application and given his address and phone number. Dad eventually reappeared and acted like nothing had ever happened. We never brought it up, and I still do not know whether any of what he told us about his job was actually true. Saved from trafficking by quick thinking and my coworker's boyfriend. I want to start by saying I work in a well-populated town with a low crime rate. There was no obvious reason to expect what was about to happen. I work in a popular coffee chain, doing afternoon and closing shifts. On the night in question, our closing crew was 4 young women. Our shift lead Sarah, who was 19, myself and my coworker Mia, both 17, and Dee, who was 18. It had been a slow night. Heavy rainfall meant almost no one was out. Both the drive-thru and the dining area were empty. I was cleaning at the front of the store when an older man walked in. He was dressed strangely for the weather. Full black clothing, heavy red jacket, combat boots, a beanie pulled low. I figured he worked outside and approached him to ask about an online order. Instead of responding, he placed a bag on the counter and began pulling out DVDs, a stack of 10 or so. Then he looked past me into the back room where my coworkers were talking, made a slow lap around the entire store, and backed out through the front door without speaking a single word. I watched him get into a large black pickup truck parked outside. I grabbed the DVDs and ran to my coworkers. Sarah looked through them and pointed out that every single movie was about a murder or a kidnapping. We called our manager. He told us there was nothing he could do and to call back if anything else happened. The man's truck had not left. It had pulled into the empty parking lot of the closed grocery store next door, which had a direct line of sight into our drive-thru window. We moved to the front of the store as a group. A few customers came through, and several asked if I was all right. My face was apparently giving everything away. Then Mia quietly pointed out that a van had been sitting in the far corner of our parking lot for almost an hour. I locked the front door. Dee's boyfriend Daniel was on his way to pick her up. With the van still there, none of us wanted her walking to her car alone. I told my manager I was closing the cafe early. He was fine with it, and we waited. Sarah and Dee went to the back of the store. Mia and I stayed up front. I was cleaning the machines with my back to her when she suddenly screamed, "Get out!" I spun around. A man was climbing through the drive-thru window. His shoulders were already through. I do not fully remember making a decision. I grabbed Mia and pulled her behind me. I grabbed the large, heavy red bucket of hot sanitizer solution I had been using to clean the counters. I threw the entire contents onto him and shoved him back out through the window, the bucket landing over his head. At the same moment, Daniel pulled into the parking lot outside. Dee ran to him. I slammed the drive-thru windows shut and locked them. The man was on the ground outside, disoriented. Within 15 to 30 seconds, Daniel was on top of him, pinning him down. Sarah was on the phone with the police. Our regular customers, who are also deputies, arrived within 5 minutes and made the arrest. The man was identified as a member of a local trafficking ring that had previously been arrested and released on bail. The van in the back of the parking lot was traced to others connected to the same ring. Legal proceedings are still ongoing. The DVDs, when checked by police, were blank, either burned unsuccessfully or wiped. I try not to think too hard about what was supposed to be on them. I still work there. Daniel is the true hero of that night. He kept that man pinned to the ground until the police arrived and he was disarmed. But I do feel a certain pride in the fact that I had a hot bucket of sanitizer ready. Trust your gut, and always know where your bucket is. 10 stories, 10 moments where everything could have gone completely differently. A baby sleeping in the next room, a little girl in a shopping trolley, a 6th grader at the end of a Christmas parade, 4 teenage girls closing up a coffee shop in the rain. None of these people were in a place that should have been dangerous. But danger does not wait for the right setting. It shows up on a Tuesday afternoon, in a checkout line, at midday. What kept every single person in today's video safe was the same thing. They paid attention. They listened to the quiet voice that said something is wrong. And then they acted. If these stories affected you, hit the like button. It helps this channel reach more people who need to hear them. And if you want more real stories every single week, subscribe and turn on the bell. I will see you in the next one. Stay safe.